As we conclude this examination of Trump's trade revolution, one conclusion emerges with startling clarity. There is no going back. The world of frictionless global commerce, of economics divorced from politics, of trade as a purely technical exercise, that world is gone forever. What has replaced it is messier, more expensive, and arguably more honest. Honest about the relationship between economic and military power. Honest about the distributional consequences of trade policy. Honest about the impossibility of separating commerce from competition between great powers. The old system produced unprecedented prosperity, but prosperity that was unevenly shared and ultimately politically unsustainable. The new system prioritizes resilience over efficiency, security over optimization, political alignment over pure economic advantage. Whether this represents progress or regression depends on your values and your position in the global hierarchy. What's indisputable is that we're witnessing the birth of a new international economic order, one that will shape the 21st century as profoundly as Bretton Woods shaped the 20th. The trade wars may have ended, but the battle they unleashed over technology, over supply chains, over the very nature of global governance has only just begun. In this new world order, every economic decision is a strategic choice. Every trade relationship, a statement of alliance. The question facing leaders from Washington to Beijing is no longer whether to embrace this reality, but how to navigate it without triggering the kind of economic warfare that devastated the world in the 1930s. History suggests that's a harder task than it sounds. The age of innocent globalization is over. The age of strategic trade has begun. January 20th, 2025. As Donald Trump takes the oath of office for his second presidency, the global economy he inherits bears little resemblance to the one he first disrupted 8 years earlier. The question isn't whether his trade revolution succeeded. It's whether anyone can control the forces he unleashed. U.S. tariffs remain near historic highs. Friendshoring has replaced efficiency as the organizing principle of global supply chains. The WTO operates in functional paralysis. China has built alternative institutions, the RCEP and the Belt and Road Initiative, that exclude American influence entirely. But here's what the conventional wisdom missed. Trump's true legacy wasn't the tariffs themselves. It was proving that economic integration, supposedly irreversible, could be reversed. That globalization, supposedly inevitable, was actually a policy choice. And choices, once made, can be unmade. Today, we're examining the new world order that emerged from the wreckage of the old, a world where trade serves strategy, where supply chains reflect alliances, where economic policy is foreign policy by other means. This isn't just about commerce anymore. It's about survival in an age of great power competition. Joe Biden's presidency offers perhaps the clearest evidence of Trump's enduring impact. Despite promises to restore traditional alliances and multilateral cooperation, Biden maintained virtually every Trump-era tariff on China. When pressed by business groups facing billions in additional costs, his administration's response was telling. The tariffs provided leverage. But Biden went further. In 2022, his administration quadrupled tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, tripled duties on steel and aluminum, and doubled tariffs on semiconductors. The CHIPS Act represented the largest industrial policy intervention since the 1960s space program. The Inflation Reduction Act's local content requirements effectively discriminated against foreign producers, all in the name of climate action. This bipartisan consensus around economic nationalism revealed a profound shift in American political economy. The era of believing that trade deficits didn't matter, that supply chain efficiency trumped security, that interdependence guaranteed peace, that era was over. The concept of friendshoring emerged as the new orthodoxy. Why rely on distant, potentially hostile suppliers when trusted allies could provide the same goods? Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen explicitly promoted sourcing from trusted trading partners to guard against geopolitical shocks. The rest of the world didn't stand still. If America was weaponizing interdependence, other nations would develop their own weapons. China's response was perhaps the most sophisticated. Facing technological containment from the West, Beijing launched its dual circulation strategy, building domestic demand while reducing reliance on foreign markets and technologies. The numbers tell the story. By 2023, only 15% of China's exports went to the U.S., down from 19% in 2018. China had successfully diversified away from American dependence. The EU, caught between American pressure and Chinese retaliation, chose a third path: strategic autonomy. This wasn't isolationism. It was selective decoupling from both superpowers in critical technologies. The EU's Critical Raw Materials Act, its European Chips Act, its restrictions on Chinese investment in sensitive sectors, all reflected a determination to avoid becoming a pawn in someone else's game. Meanwhile, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, expanded to include Iran, Egypt, Ethiopia, and the UAE. Together, they represented 45% of global population and 37% of global GDP. Their shared grievance wasn't just American hegemony. It was the use of economic networks as instruments of coercion. Russia's invasion of Ukraine crystallized these dynamics. Western sanctions, while economically devastating, pushed Moscow deeper into Chinese and Indian arms. The petroyuan emerged as Russia sold oil to China in renminbi rather than dollars. Alternative payment systems, China's CIPS, Russia's SPFS, challenged the dollar's monopoly over international finance. Three sectors embody the new logic of strategic trade competition. Semiconductors represent the crown jewel of the digital economy. Taiwan's dominance in advanced chip manufacturing, 92% of the world's most sophisticated processors, makes it the most strategically valuable real estate on Earth. When China conducts military exercises in the Taiwan Strait, global chip prices spike. When a drought threatens Taiwan's water supply, auto production slows from Detroit to Stuttgart. The U.S. response has been massive reinvestment. The CHIPS Act's $52 billion represents just the beginning. By 2030, America aims to produce 20% of the world's advanced semiconductors domestically, up from virtually zero today. Samsung and TSMC are building megafabs in Texas and Arizona, subsidized by American taxpayers who understand that technological sovereignty justifies almost any cost. Rare earth minerals offer China its most potent economic weapon. Controlling 60% of global production and 90% of processing capacity, Beijing can essentially veto any advanced manufacturing project worldwide. When China restricted rare earth exports in 2019, it sent an unmistakable message. Interdependence flows both ways. The West's response has been frantic diversification. American and European companies are reopening mines from California to Greenland, despite environmental costs that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Australia's Lynas Corporation has become a strategic asset, not just a mining company. Energy trade reflects the geopolitical realignment most clearly. European purchases of American liquefied natural gas soared after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. China became the world's largest importer of Russian oil, buying at steep discounts while Western companies fled. The Middle East found itself courted by all sides, its energy resources more valuable than ever in a fragmenting world. Trump's return to power in 2025 vindicated his central argument, that economic nationalism resonates with voters who feel left behind by globalization. But the world he re-enters is far more complex than the one he left. His early moves suggest continuity with escalation. Steel and aluminum tariffs jumped to 50% for most countries. The fentanyl tariff imposed 20% duties on virtually all Chinese goods. The de minimis exemption, allowing small packages under $800 to enter duty-free, was eliminated for Chinese products, devastating e-commerce flows. But Trump faces constraints his first presidency didn't encounter. American allies have developed alternatives to U.S. markets and technologies. China's economy, while slower growing, is more self-reliant. Global supply chains have already adapted to higher tariffs and greater uncertainty. Perhaps most importantly, the ideological climate has shifted. What seemed radical in 2017, using trade policy to advance geopolitical goals, now appears conventional wisdom across the political spectrum. Biden's industrial policy, Europe's strategic autonomy, China's dual circulation, all reflect the same logic Trump pioneered. Looking toward 2030, three scenarios compete for plausibility. Scenario 1. Deepening fragmentation. Trade increasingly flows within geopolitical blocs. A US-led Western sphere, a China-centered Asian sphere, a European middle ground trying to maintain relations with both. The WTO becomes irrelevant. Cross-border investment plummets. Innovation slows as research and development fractures along national lines. This isn't science fiction. By 2025, regional supply chains already account for nearly 50% of global trade, up from 35% in 2018. The world is quietly dividing into competing economic ecosystems. Scenario 2. Managed competition. Great powers establish rules for their rivalry. Spheres of influence, red lines, mechanisms for avoiding accidental escalation. Think of it as economic arms control. Agreements to limit the most destructive forms of trade warfare while accepting that competition will continue. The Geneva Agreement of May 2025, temporarily reducing U.S.-China tariffs from over 100% to 10% for 90 days, might represent a model. Both sides recognized that unlimited escalation served no one's interests. Scenario 3. Technological decoupling with economic integration. Nations separate their technology sectors, semiconductors, artificial intelligence, quantum computing, while maintaining trade in everything else. China develops its own internet, its own financial system, its own technological ecosystem, but continues trading agricultural products and consumer goods with the West. This scenario recognizes that some technologies are simply too sensitive for interdependence, while others pose no security threat. Lost in the grand strategic narratives are the human consequences of this transformation. American consumers pay an estimated $2,800 more annually due to tariffs, a regressive tax that hits the poor hardest. Chinese factory workers in Guangdong see orders disappear as production migrates to Vietnam. German auto workers face an uncertain future as supply chains reorganize around political rather than economic logic. But there are winners too. Vietnamese seamstresses see wages rise as foreign investment pours in. Mexican manufacturers benefit from nearshoring trends. American steelworkers enjoy protection from foreign competition. The question isn't whether this transformation creates winners and losers. All economic change does. The question is whether the benefits justify the costs, whether the security gained compensates for the efficiency lost. Thanks for watching. If you found this video useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Capital Compass, so you won't miss any future deep dives into the forces shaping our world. See you in the next video.